Hey you guys, this is Josh
and Carolyn
with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat, Food for Thought.
Yeah.
And this week is a Q&A.
Yay!
So no main topic, we are covering your questions and topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
very
I like
cool.
these. I love the Q&A sessions.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's fun to hear what you guys are thinking, and even some good input here. So we've shared a few comments too, not just questions, because there's just some great input there.
Right.
Yeah, and I know we don't get to the questions on the YouTube comments much.
Right.
Just don't have the time to. So this is our place to try to answer some of those questions.
Right.
And hang out with you guys a bit. So this is going to be fun. We're covering the last 4 or 5 videos. Mm-hmm. And some good topics here today, talking about long-term food storage and organizing your pantry and curing pumpkins.
All right, gonna cover a lot.
And yeah, and some herb rub, maybe a few other things in there that people brought up.
Okay.
So very cool.
Sounds good.
But before we get there, what's going on?
Well, by the time you guys watch this, this will be after Thanksgiving.
And it's not now.
It's not right now. We're filming this beforehand because we are taking Thanksgiving and the following weekend off.
So, much as possible.
Yeah. So anyways, I would be at the appropriate place to say we had a great Thanksgiving and it was wonderful, but we haven't had it yet.
We do hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
We do. But hey, I have a question for you.
Oh.
How's my hair? How's my hair look?
Your hair is looking great.
Hey, good answer.
Beautiful, yeah.
Good.
I love it when you've got it all long and down and flowing.
Good.
You're beautiful.
Good.
Yeah.
I am trying out a brand new No-Poo method. No-Poo method. That's kind of weird. That comes across better.
You've been doing something I didn't know about.
So No-Poo is no shampoo, right? And it's a whole method of not shampooing your hair with traditional shampoos. You use other things instead. Some people just go with just washing their hair with water. I can't quite do that. And over the years, I've used different No-Poo methods. The main one being baking soda. But I'm trying out a new one that I'm really excited about, and that's garbanzo bean flour.
Wow.
Isn't that
okay.
funny? I'm really excited about it. I know. Who would have thought?
Beans.
I don't know. I've heard all about this now, and people just love it. I'm really excited about that because we could potentially grow it ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I really like that. We have 6 daughters. That is a lot of shampoo, let me tell you.
I love to save dollars.
We love to save dollars.
We can.
We love to save the packaging waste, all of those things, and grow our own. So I'm really excited about it. I hope it works out. But, of course, there's always any No-Poo method. There's this transition.
It's the first time I've heard this term.
Okay.
And so
I guess we don't talk about it in these terms in the house.
Guys' mind, I guess. I don't know.
So anytime you go to an alternate shampoo, you can expect your hair to go through a pretty serious transition. In fact, it can get pretty nappy for a while and unruly, very hard to handle.
Don't want the nap.
Generally, that's because it's stripping away all of the chemicals that were in the shampoos you've been using.
Well, and you get a lot of oil start to come out because your body naturally oils your hair.
You've got balancing that's happening. You've got all these different things that are happening. So usually it'll take 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I'm really hoping that because I have done this quite a bit before, I don't have to go through that. And I gotta say, I mean, today was the first day I washed my hair with garbanzo bean flour, and it's soft and nice.
Well, it looks good, and it looks shiny.
Looks shiny, okay.
Clean without looking oily, which is, what seems to happen when you go too long without some sort of poo.
So
right,
anyways, I'll keep you guys updated on how the transition goes. But I'm really excited about this. So if you've ever used garbanzo bean flour as a No-Poo, then please write your experiences in the comment and let me know what you think of it. So
cool.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm up to.
Besides No-Poo in your hair,
right?
What have you been up to?
Oh wow. Okay, so baking. Lots of baking. Hey, look at what I'm doing a video on today. Right here, can you guys see that? That is sourdough Parker House rolls. I'm actually still getting ready for Thanksgiving.
Do you know how hard that is to sit here and smell those and see those?
You can have them by dinner, but I have to film them first. So a lot of baking, getting ready for the holidays. So
very cool.
Mostly me.
Smelling good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Oh man, winter prep, working on mom and dad's,
Right.
and trying to get that buttoned down, and hunting, a little bit of hunting.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, and by the time you guys see this, I will have done quite a bit more because we'll have a little time off
Right.
around Thanksgiving, and trying to encourage Tristan to get out there. He's been seeing some nice bucks, hasn't got a shot on one yet,
Yeah.
and so. That's about it. It's just a lot of the same, a lot of little details, getting ready for winter.
Yeah.
Kind of battening down the hatches. I think we have our first good snow coming. We've had a little bit
Looks
early,
like it this weekend.
but looks like something that's going to come and maybe stick. So
We'll see.
pretty ready for it. Feeling really good. Got all the barn shavings in, which we're really excited about.
Okay, so barn shavings, you're talking about
wood shavings that we're using for the barn bedding.
For bedding in the barn.
And if you have access to wood shavings there, it's way better than straw. There's way more surface area, it's more absorptive, and it's actually easier to clean and deal with.
Yeah.
So anyways, we've got great access to that here. Just discovered a new source that is free in bulk.
That's good.
If I go
We
haul
like
it.
free.
Yeah, so we've got hopefully a winter's worth of barn shavings.
Yeah. So can you give a tip on what sort of place to look for if you want to look for large amounts of something like that?
So large scale cabinet shop, which is where we're getting this from, that's building custom cabinets from real wood, not a cabinet shop that's building from particle board or anything like that. Those materials are going to have a lot of chemicals in them. But so a woodworking shop or a cabinet shop, large scale, they have to do something with that. In this case, it's large. They have truckloads that go out of there, and they'll deliver it, which we've done for a cost, which was still pretty cost effective. But they just set up their system to where I could actually pull a trailer under there and they would load me up.
Oh,
and it didn't cost anything. So
right.
You got to look around. You might have to drive a little ways depending on where you're at. But if you're in, there's cabinet shops, there's woodworking places everywhere.
Right.
So I would try to find those and find out how they are handling that.
Yeah.
Of course, the other source is tree companies as well. A lot of the tree companies, though, you have green material mixed in, and that's a great mulch. If you guys have heard me talk about mulching, I love that mulch, but it's going to have a higher moisture content in it. That's not going to be so great for barn shavings where you want it really dry so that it is absorbing up the urine and wetness that gets in the barn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. What are you drinking?
Cool. I am drinking, of course, Farmhouse Teas, our favorite. And this is a new one I'm trying out today, Prairie Pumpkin Chai.
Ooh.
This is a caffeinated tea. I was missing a little bit of my caffeine in the afternoon, so I chose this one, and it is really good.
Good.
And thanks again, Cian.
Yeah, over at Farmhouse Teas. This one is a chocolate conniption. I had to get it because of the name, and it is good. I really like it. I just have a little cream in it and a little bit of monk fruit sweetener.
Yeah.
And it is really good.
And you guys that love their teas, they grow some of the ingredients themselves, and they buy local from some of them, and then I know they source some from some organic sources. Right. So I don't think it's certified organic, but they try to be as organic as they can.
Yeah.
And it's a reasonable price, and just
great
super
small
good teas. And we just love seeing them do well.
Yeah.
Small business like that. So check them out. There should be some links
in the
down below where you can go check out their teas.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Cool. Well, we've got a lot going on, a lot of questions here. This one's going to run long, so get your cup of tea or coffee and sit on down. And we're going to start with questions from long-term food storage hacks video, where we were talking about long-term food storage. And one was a comment. We referenced Michelle Price's YouTube channel last week. What is that?
Oh yeah, Chocolate Box Cottage.
And we failed to get the link in. Sorry about that. A lot of you asked for the link. Yeah. It is there now, and it will be in this video as well.
Right.
And I think a lot of you found your way over there, though.
Yeah, I think we had quite a few.
So thanks for going and checking that out. That was really cool to see. And if you haven't made it over, go check out her channel.
Yeah.
Okay, so first major question of the day from Angela Rash. Okay, Angela says, so my burning question is this: how many black shirts does Carolyn have?
Black shirts. I have about 3 that I wear regularly, but you know what my trick is in these is that I get the really good wool shirts, because you can just wear those things over and over again. They don't get as dirty. They don't need as much washing. I still do wash them. They don't need as much washing, but I get to smell good. Garbanzo bean powder maybe doesn't have quite the scent that traditional shampoo has, so I gotta wash my clothes instead. So yeah. Check out the wool clothing though. There's some really good wool clothing out there.
There are, yeah. We've gone to that for underclothing, at least for the t-shirts. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the t-shirts, and they just don't hold on to the body odor.
Yeah.
It has to do with the bacteria won't survive in the clothing and breathe, and that's where the smell comes from.
Yeah.
So cool, very cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how many
That's
you had.
funny.
All right, okay. Getting on to a little more homesteading topics. Leanne Brondo asks, will you post how you made the pumpkin leathers?
Oh, absolutely, because you should be getting a video. A video
You
should
should have gotten it.
come out somewhere here.
Right, yesterday.
Soon. Yesterday?
Yesterday.
Or, okay.
So check it out. There'll be a link here for it, or an end card or something, and you can get to that if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
That will be a good video.
It's really easy.
I love
just as a plug, it's really easy.
She does a lot of fruit leathers, and I love those. They're great. They're great snacks. The kids love them for candy.
Right.
I love backpacking with them and hunting with them. And I can take those fruit leathers, a little bit of jerky, and some nuts, and that's just a great backpacking, hunting, day outing meal. Yeah.
Real light, real easy to travel.
And those fit right in there.
Yeah.
Okay, waxing sustainable. Love that. I love that title there. Waxing sustainable. I would love to know how you guys tackle things other than food in your large family. Hygiene products, disposable products, clothing, cleaning products, school supplies, etc. That is a lot of content right there.
Now, I'm assuming we're talking about buying and stocking up, because we were talking about long-term
Right,
food
I would think
storage
so.
and that.
Yeah.
Let me just say, obviously we can't cover all of those things in very much detail right here on this video, but you start one thing at a time, right? It's just one piece
small.
at a time.
Yep.
And
One topic.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And start with something that's easier if you haven't done a lot of this.
Right, yeah. And always think about your storage on the other side of buying before you buy, because especially when you start getting into things like school supplies or clothing, you really need to handle storage. But I am thinking about doing a video series maybe late this winter on some of these topics. So if you're interested in hearing those, let us know in the comments. So
because that ties into, this is in the context of long-term storage. You're also going to cover those kind of in the context of we're looking at doing some zero waste, which is a fallacy, but less waste
right?
Topics that we're going to focus on.
Sure, yeah.
All of those
absolutely
gets into that topic.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. All right. Ecocentric homestead. Let's see here. This is a long question. Let me see how to phrase this as quickly as I can. I was watching a video on another channel, and someone commented to them that a loaf of bread could be bought cheaper than made. You want to address that?
Yeah. Is this a question that they
Well,
have?
it is a question, and we just wanted to point out that yes, you can, but you can also. It's also not true. You can make a loaf of bread cheaper than you can buy, and you can make a quality loaf of bread much cheaper than most loaves of bread you can buy.
Yeah, I think they're pointing out the comment here that, cardboard is really cheap.
Which is what your cheap bread is.
It doesn't mean you want to eat it, right?
Yeah.
So you can probably go get super, super cheap bread that is probably cheaper than any bread you could make at home. However, if you're making really good quality bread at home out of good ingredients that don't include a lot of things that are not healthy for you, your homemade bread is going to be way, way more economical than the equivalent bought at the store. It's going to blow it out of the water than the equivalent. I figured at one point I can make my homemade 100% whole wheat sprouted loaf of sandwich bread for about 99 cents a loaf. Maybe a little bit cheaper. The cheapest thing that I could find like that at the grocery store was over $5.
Comparable, right?
Yeah, the comparable thing like that. And so, I could get a big loaf of white junky bread at the grocery store for like 89 cents,
There's
99 cents, but I don't want to eat it.
There's no comparison there.
I don't want to feed it to my animals. I don't want to feed it to my children. It's just, there's a bunch of stuff in there I don't want to eat. So.
Well, and it brings up a good point. Cheaper is not always better.
Yeah.
And, there are certainly some people focus just on low cost everything. Low cost everything, especially when it comes to food, has repercussions. And while we want to be frugal, while we want to do the best we can with what we have, we also want the best quality.
Yeah.
And finding that balance sometimes is tricky. To me, in bread, it's a no-brainer because you can produce that quality of bread for just about the price, maybe not technically lower, but then whatever you can buy the cheapest bread, but there's just no comparison there.
Yeah.
And that's well worth the effort.
Yeah. So
good topic, ecocentric.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the comment there.
That is eco, not ego.
Ecocentric. Right.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Diane Bailey. Sorry, Diane. Diane Bailey. Sometimes your eyes just see what they see. Where do you buy organic coffee beans?
Ooh.
Okay, well, you have to shop for organic coffee beans. And it's been a little while. I haven't been roasting a lot this year, hoping next spring to get back into every, once a week roasting. But usually that's online, unless you've got a coffee shop that will work with you. If you've got a friend that owns a coffee shop, sometimes, they'll buy bulk for you and sell to you. That's harder to come by, so you got to go online. There's a lot of sites out there. Sweet Maria's used to be one of the most consistently lowest price.
Right.
But you get into all kinds of different factors when you're buying green beans. So really just shop organic green beans online, and you've got Sweet Maria's.
Organic green coffee beans.
Right, green coffee beans, sorry. You've got Sweet Maria's, you've got Dean's beans, you've got, I just found one, Son of Fresco, that I'm interested in, and Coffee Bean Corral is another one of the major ones. If single source fair trade is important to you, which it is to us, then you've got to kind of whittle that down, and then you just have to compare prices amongst those.
Yeah.
The thing I like about Son of Fresco, which is a new one to me, is that it looks like they'll sell in larger batches up to 50 pounds, which I hadn't seen anybody doing last time I looked online. And you're always going to get the best price buying in bulk like that. So that can be hard to find.
Right. One of the great ways to do that, you touched on this though, is go to your local good coffee shop and go ask them if they will get you an extra bag of beans, if they're your local roaster, somebody who's roasting themselves, and see if they will just get you a bag of beans, because a lot of times their price is going to be better than anything you can get by the single bag or small amount at the store.
Right, absolutely. So, and if you can do that, that's great. If not, you just gotta price compare, because their prices actually move around a lot.
Yes.
And so you might one week, depending on how much you're using coffee and how often you're buying, you might go one time and find the best price here, but then you go and search it again. You go, where did I buy that from? And you get to looking and you figure it out, and then you realize somebody else has got a better price. They do move their prices around. So it's just one of those things that you want to, whenever you're buying, you want to price shop it.
Now, the great thing about the green coffee beans is that they store really long once you get them home. Unlike roasted beans, which really need to be used up within a couple weeks to be
2 weeks.
Ideal.
Yeah, is long, really. Their
weeks.
optimal is
Otherwise,
in the end of the first week.
Okay. Otherwise, the oils start to go rancid in them. So you get off flavors and it's not as good for you. You start having issues with it. But the green beans, as long as you keep them dry and, relatively temperature stable, they last for years and years and years.
Yeah, you store it like your wheat and some of your other grains, and they store just fine.
Yeah. Good.
Cool. Okay. Helen Mooney wants to know, or says, when I started buying bulk and didn't have, that's right. Okay, this is a great just comment and thought here on getting started on bulk buying, because we were talking about how challenging of a budget issue it can be to just start buying in bulk. So she says, when I started buying in bulk and didn't have a bunch of money, I just budgeted $50 a month on bulk, and then eventually that evened out to bigger savings. And that is just a great strategy, Helen. Just take what you can, even if it's not 50, but I mean, you do need a certain amount.
Right.
But even if you got to start setting 5, 10 a week until you can save up enough, then do that. And over time, you start to get into a cycle, and that you're able to put aside more and more as you start making bulk purchases. Right. Then you have a little more in the budget to set aside, and it just kind of snowballs, which is actually what somebody commented on, referencing Dave Ramsey and the debt snowball effect of paying off debt. And somebody actually was having this dialogue, and it's very similar to that. It's just the opposite direction.
Right.
And so it's almost like investment snowballing, because you're starting to buy these
Right,
things in
it
bulk
is.
and get good pricing being stocked up on them, and that starts to accumulate into a full system.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So great comment, Helen. Tammy Merrick asks from Ontario, Canada. Looking for homesteading property this spring. Any advice? Well, that's another one that's a big topic, and I've been asked a bit. I need to think about doing a property buying pamphlet video, and definitely can do that. But there's a couple things just real quick that I suggest. And this is not exclusive, but some of the main things you need to think about. First one is access. Making sure you have legal access. How long is that access, and then the maintenance that goes with that, depending on the length. Very, very important. Obviously, if you don't have legal access, you've got problems, and some people sometimes don't do their homework, especially if you're if you've saved up and you're buying cash and the bank's not making you do all the title searches. Make sure you do your title searches and make sure that your access is secure and good. But then you've got to think about how long is it, what kind of terrain is it, and what is it going to take to maintain it. That's what a lot of people don't think about is, you know, this beautiful place, but it's back there a ways, and how am I going to get the snow out of the way? How am I going to deal with the low areas that get muddy? There's just all kinds of issues there. So that's key tip number one. Second is water. What is your water source? You know, and that's going to depend on if you're buying raw land, a home, what's the quality of it? Is there any? If there's not any developed water source, how are you going to develop it? Are you going to, you know, gather rainwater if you're off grid? Are you going to drill a well? I would not advise buying a piece of property that has not, if well is what you're going to depend on, work out getting the well into the purchase price and having well dug first to make sure there's water there.
Got it.
Even in areas where there's pretty abundant water, sometimes people drill a hole 500 feet and don't hit water when everybody else is getting water at 200-300 feet, and that gets expensive. So you just really want to secure your water, whatever your plan is. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but really secure that. Of course, power, knowing what your power source is going to be, how you're going to handle that. I did a consult on somebody not too long ago who had a long road. They had access issues, and they had power issues. And as they did their research, and I was very glad for them, because they realized that the cost between those two things was just prohibitive to get power and to get a road that was usable. And even if the road was usable, the maintenance of it was just a ton of work. More than they wanted. So one person might be fine with it. It was way more than they wanted. And so I was glad that they sorted that out. And the other one is just the home, and you know, if you're going to build, thinking about that. If you're buying existing property, how everything's laid out, the condition of it. Get a home inspection, and just really look at everything. You know, you can get an older place that's beat down with a lot of infrastructure that's a good price, and it's worth dealing with all the issues and fixing up. But there can be issues that aren't worth dealing with. So those are, I think, four of the top biggies to think about. One
more that I would add that I think we often think about when we've had to buy a property is the situation to the sun.
Absolutely.
Because growing is so, the aspect, there we go. The growing is so important to us, growing our own food. So. And
all of those are more important than soil. A lot of people will say soil, and soil is important, but unless you're farming large scale, then that does become more important if you're building a large business enterprise. But for the homesteader, a lot of soil can be improved at a low cost compared to finding the perfect property with the perfect soil. Definitely want to consider that. But that aspect makes all the difference.
So can you just elaborate on that for just a second, what that is?
On the aspect? So the aspect is the slope of the land and how it's facing the sun. And so, you know, in the northern hemisphere, generally, you want to be facing south, southwest. Now, if you're in the desert in the northern hemisphere, which a lot of people are, you may be wanting to face the opposite. You want more shade and may want to be mitigating the sun. But most of us are trying to take advantage of the sun in the growing months and in the winter, and then we're going to mitigate it during the hot season with shade trees and different strategies like that. So you just want to think how that's going to affect you. The colder the climate you're in, the more important that becomes.
Absolutely. Good.
Okay, so that's a quickie. Let's see. We can talk about that one for a long time. Jody Callahan asks, I'd love to hear more about a brief comment I heard on a previous video about having temporarily eaten a vegetarian diet. Oh, okay. Gotcha. If you don't mind sharing what made you decide to try that and what made you switch back. Well, that was a long time ago.
Right.
I had a friend.
That was you.
That was me. And it was in my 20s, and I had a friend that was vegetarian. He's actually one of the people that really got me into healthy eating. I didn't have a whole lot of that growing up. And he got me eating healthy in general, and he was a vegetarian, so he talked me into trying it. Yeah. So I committed to 6 months, and you know, a lot of it was really good. It wasn't crazy, it didn't bug me a whole lot, but I just missed meat. And I felt better after going back to meat. I still stayed real healthy and ate a lot of raw vegetables and fruits, but I just felt better going back to meat. I missed it, so I decided to try it and see after being solidly vegetarian 6 months. And I felt better with the meat in my diet. And I still do today. When I eat a diet that's high in good quality meats and vegetables, as for me predominantly, that works great for me.
Yeah.
So
good.
And some people do real well with being vegetarian.
Some people do. Yeah.
And that works for them.
Yeah.
So. Okay, Carolyn, this is from Tidbits and Garden Tales. Wow,
okay.
Fun. I want to go check out that channel.
I know, that's fun.
Sounds cool. Garlic, she says. I watched the video on fermenting garlic, and I'm needing to have the amount of garlic that is sitting in our kitchen preserved longer than 1 year.
Okay.
Glad to hear you've got a lot of good garlic.
Yeah, that's really good.
Will the fermentation do this? And that's the place to leave it there, I think.
Okay. Yes, it will actually. That jar of garlic that I did for that video, I had so much in there, and we have grown so much garlic every year since that jar is still in our refrigerator. I think there's only like 4 or 5 cloves left in there now, because I'm use off the fresh garlic first, and it is still good.
That's in the refrigerator.
That's in the refrigerator, and that is now what, 2 years old, 1.5 years old.
Right.
I'm trying to think of when that video was. And it has lasted really well, and the flavor is still good, although I've got to say I feel like the flavor of the garlic is mellowing a little bit. It's not as sharp as it was right off the bat. But if you really have a lot of garlic and you need to preserve it, you know, really the best thing to do, in my opinion, if you want it to go past 1 year, is to turn it into garlic powder or garlic granules. Go ahead and dehydrate it. And when you dehydrate it, if you dehydrate it and you keep it whole but dried, your flavor is going to last a lot longer. So you just powder a few months worth at a time rather than powdering all of it.
The flavor? I was actually reading somebody commenting about the intensity of the flavor. Like good, but like can be like really intense.
It can intensify because you're removing the liquid out of it, the water out of it. So the general rule of thumb is that you use about half the amount of something dried that you would fresh, because you have the water all evaporated out, so it fits in a smaller space. Right. So that would be the way that I would go if I had to do a large amount of garlic.
Cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty, love the garlic. That's another one like pepper for me. You just put it on everything.
Everything, yeah, I know, it's so good.
Yeah, we had bought some garlic, some bulk garlic, and he had what was called Thai fire.
Right.
Ooh, that was good on the pizzas, on the homemade pizzas.
Yeah,
like
spicy.
Yep. Okay, Jay Carter says, this is a comment and a good one, talking about 5-gallon pails. Good place to get them is from a bakery. He gets them for $1.50 with the lids, and they are food grade. So another great resource. Look for those used resources like that when you don't just go to Staples or wherever. It's great if you can figure that out. Most of you've probably got a bakery around.
Yeah, even your grocery store bakery usually gets things in. You know, I'm seeing a lot right now, the 2.5-gallon buckets, the 3-gallon buckets, but they come with lids and they are food grade. A lot of times you have to bring them home and wash them, but
it's okay.
It's pretty easy.
Well, you're solving somebody else's problem, solving your own problem and somebody else's at the same time. Yeah, and that's always a win-win. I like that. Let's see. Rachel E. Hickory Hill says, I have a question regarding your fermented veggies. Do you store them on the shelf? I keep mine in a refrigerator because I do not have a cool place. How long do you generally keep your fermented fruits?
Okay, so if you do not have a cool shelf place to put them, they're going to continue to ferment, and they won't stay as good quality and as good flavor as long. They'll get really sour, actually, really quickly. They get very strong, and they get kind of unpalatable. So you want to have them in a cool environment the best you can if you're going to store them on the shelf. By cool, I mean like 50, 55 degrees or lower is kind of getting into your ideal range. If you don't have that, the refrigerator really is the best way to go. Once they hit the refrigerator, they last a long time.
Oh, you're just talking about that garlic.
Yeah, they last until they turn to mush, really. And then, I mean, they're not bad for you. You know, kind of the thing with the ferments is either they're going to go moldy if they lose the liquid on the top, and you don't want to eat the mold, obviously. They're going to turn to mush, or they're going to become unpalatable because they're going to get so strong. But I don't really know that there's a point where a ferment gets bad for you, or like not, you can't eat it. It just gets so like, ooh, that you might not want to eat it.
Assuming it's been properly taken care of, right? And it doesn't get infiltrated with another bacteria or something.
Right. Yeah. So the way you would know that is if it just smelled awful. The word that we usually use when we're talking about fermented foods is putrid. If it smells like something rotting, like you won't have to question, is that a strong fermenting smell or is that a rotting smell? It's going to be so bad that there is no way you're going to want to get near it.
You'll know.
You will know.
You'll have no
absolutely
doubt.
know if it has gone bad because you've gotten some off bacteria in there. Otherwise, you'll see mold on the top, which if it's a white mold or a green mold, you can just scrape that off and any food that's affected off. And your ferment underneath should still be absolutely fine. If you start getting any strange colored molds like blacks, pinks, anything like that, you best toss the whole thing. But if it's not molding, you kind of have until you can't stand the flavor anymore. So
cool.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, moving on to Christina Elliott. She says, what an intriguing idea to bring permaculture practices into the barn. Thank you. I'm excited about this. It's going to take some time to develop. But once the chicks are familiar with their new surroundings and have worked the barn for you, will they have access to limited or free-ranging outside the barn when weather permits? Absolutely, and I'm excited about what I'm going to do. These chicks are getting started in the barn, so they're going to have the barn for the winter because the snow will start coming down. They won't want to go anywhere, but they've got a large area in there and in the animal pens to scratch through the poo and help break some of that down and get the grains and the different things out of there. But as we develop this, they will go out into the barnyard once weather permits, and we're going to create their own chicken yard around this corner of the barn that will have a lot of plantings in it, from herbs all the way up to elderberries and mulberries over them to provide food for them. It's going to be a whole system, and it's going to be really exciting. It's going to take us a couple years to develop, and come next spring when we can really get going, I hope to video some of that and take you guys along on that journey. But a lot of functions to stack there.
Right there, yeah. But theoretically, even during the winter, once you start letting them out into the barn, they could wander outside if they wanted to.
Well, they can. They won't because of the snow. And the chicken coop's got an openness so that light gets in there. It's dark this time of year, so everybody's dealing with the dark. But the chickens get plenty of air. They get plenty in the barn. And when weather permits, we crack the barn doors so that like the chickens can come and go and there's light and air. So you definitely have to manage that this time of year. They are not made to just exist solely in the barn.
Right.
That's not the idea. They need to have lots of room.
Yeah.
I think that was most of that question. Okay, D. Walsh says, what kind of beans do you buy? I'm guessing he's talking about not coffee beans, but regular beans.
Okay.
Because we're talking about
long-term storage.
Right.
So for beans, let's see, I buy like navy bean, any sort of a good white bean that I can get. I buy pinto beans, I buy black beans, and I do occasionally buy chickpeas or garbanzo beans, so I could
maybe buy more of them now.
My own flour
right.
for my shampoo. And then of course the green coffee beans is a different bean, but I'm thinking that's about what I buy. I don't like kidney beans. It's one of the few foods that I don't really like. I guess I'm not a crazy fan of lima beans either, so we don't buy any of those. But aside from that, those are the beans that we buy in for long-term storage.
Cool. Sorry, I was having a thought. Have you seen the soap commercial, the men's natural soap commercial?
I have seen it.
Oh, now you guys, if you're watching YouTube, you have to have seen that.
I've seen it, yeah.
Well, I was thinking about the garbanzo beans and me doing the commercial about so that was my new one. All right, yeah. Okay, so Valerie Kennedy says, I have canned potatoes raw packed and they did great. Are you supposed to do that? I did hot pack them 1 year and they were mushy after processing them. Thanks.
So the recommendation to hot pack them comes because of the starches that comes out of the potatoes.
Okay.
So if you raw pack them, you pack them with all that starch in there and they get starchy. I don't know, a little gritty, grainy flavored. Hot packing them, usually involves simmering them for a short amount of time and then putting fresh boiling water over them in the jar. That way you're kind of leaving all that starch, potato starch, behind in the pot. You're not actually canning them. So that can make a cleaner tasting product. But to my knowledge offhand, there is no reason why you cannot raw pack them. No safety reason for that. So
Okay.
If you're happy with the results of that, then go for it.
Very cool. All right, we're going to move on to a different video about curing pumpkins here.
Okay.
Any recipes on canning the pumpkins, puree, or pumpkin pie filling? Tis the season.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
we
you do.
all would like to be able to do that. That is one of the things that you are not supposed to can is a pumpkin puree or a pie filling because it thickens so much. It gets so thick that it's hard to tell that the heat can circulate throughout the entire jar. So you have a couple options. One is to can pumpkin chunks, which you can do, and then you just have to puree it at the last minute. Now that's really easy if you have a jar and you can just dump it out into a blender. It's pretty simple.
That's it.
Right
Wow.
there. So that's not too many extra steps. If you really want that pumpkin puree just done, which is handy to have, you should really just go to freezing it.
Okay.
So.
And then I think you've got a video. I think you have a video coming out, don't you?
On
Second
the
part of that,
pumpkin
pumpkin pie filling, not can
Yes.
filling, but on making.
Yes, I think that was last
That's-
weekend that came out, if I'm tracking the video releases right.
Okay.
So, yeah, from fresh pumpkin, making fresh pies from fresh pumpkin.
That's right. So we will
It
link
is-
to that down
yeah.
below or in the cards here.
They're really good.
Yeah, check that out. Okay, Jennifer Sinclair says, I'm curious, do you save some pumpkin seeds for the following year's garden? No, we don't. And that is because of the cross-pollination that's going to happen unless you are taking very specific methods or only growing one variety of squash.
Yes, including your summer squash,
Right.
which some varieties of summer squash can cross with some of your varieties of winter squash. You have, I think, 3 main species of squash, and it's hard to make sure if you're growing multiple types of either winter squash and pumpkins and summer squash. It's really hard to make sure you're not getting a cross. And if you get a cross, you're not going to end up with pumpkins next year. You're going to end up with some strange combination. And sadly enough, sometimes those are not edible. Because they get really bitter. There's a certain gene that can come out in those crosses that can make them more like a gourd, very bitter and not edible, not nice. And so it's not one of those things that it's like, hey, it's gonna be edible, don't worry about it. It's maybe doesn't look like a pumpkin, but it's good enough. It's really not one of those cases and scenarios. It's kind of unless you're gonna do it right with proper isolation space or caging or controlling the pollination, which is all a little fussy, honestly.
Well, and some people are into that. Some people are into that,
and it can be done.
That can be done. So it's just that's a bunch of work. We choose not to do it that way. The other option is to grow just one variety.
Yes.
And that is something I definitely am considering doing, and then saving those seeds up for a few years and taking care of them. So. So there are options out there, but you don't want to just go saving the seeds. You've got a bunch of different winter squash and summer squash, and saving the seeds. Not going to work well for you.
Right.
Let's see here. Mega Mindy Lou. Does cooking it with the seeds change the flavor of the pumpkins? Does cooking the seeds change the flavor?
So
cooking
she's
with seeds.
referring to a video that I show, the Curing Pumpkin video, where I show how to just cook them whole and then pull the seeds out afterwards. It's really easy, especially if you have that thick rind. And no, cooking them with the seeds in does not change the flavor, at least in my experience. I've never had a flavor change from that. So you know, those seeds to stay in their nice little seed packets, seed
shells.
So it doesn't really do that.
Like it when you take the seeds out and you roast pumpkin seeds. That is
right.
a favorite around our house. Don't do that all the time, but that is really, really good.
Right, and those pumpkin seeds are really good for a lot of things. They're really good to give to the animals. It's really believed that they deworm the animals or people, which if you live on a farm or a homestead, you have animals, that's something you should be thinking about. So it's good to eat those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, moving on here. Mary Jo Varney wants to know about the brown leather book.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do with that?
I actually have it sitting here.
Talking about that recently.
We did answer this in one of the other ones. This is my book of secrets. It's got all my special recipes, records, all sorts of things that I keep that I don't want to disappear. So when I find a recipe that is like a family keeper, it goes in here. So this is my special one. It is actually a journal, a leather-bound journal that comes from the company Colonel Littleton out of Tennessee.
Somebody commented that they, when you mentioned that before, that they were from, I don't remember the town now, but that town. They knew the shop well. And somebody else asked us for a link. We don't have a link for you, but if you just Google Colonel Littleton's, and I would think just that, if you need to add leather in there, you'll find them.
Oh yeah,
and we've been to the shop. In the shop, just a wonderful little place.
Wonderful place, and really high quality.
Oh yeah,
this thing will last for generations probably.
We have a couple travel bags that my mom got us a while back from there. That are just wonderful.
Right.
Okay, M. Jackson, referring again to this pumpkin and the puree. Can it be cooked in an Instapot?
I'm sure it can, especially if it would fit in an Instapot. I actually inherited an Instapot and have used it zero times.
What's the matter with the Instapot? A lot of people like the Instapot.
A lot of people like it. You know, I have a little bit of a problem with having all of my food cooked under pressure. It's like, you know, some of our food is pressure canned, but that's a percentage of our food. It's not what we eat for every meal. So I kind of, I don't know.
But is it useful for people? I mean, for certain people, I know for our household it doesn't fit in the flow, but you know, is it it's useful for them if that's what they have?
Absolutely.
You know?
I just don't know how to tell you how to do that. But yes, people love their Instapots, and I know they work really well for people.
Cool.
So yeah.
Okay, now we're moving on to another video, how to organize your pantry and food storage. Okay, Joe and Lee Cons would really like to know about storing coffee beans.
People like the coffee beans.
They do, yes. I've had several requests for how-to on roasting, and you know, we're going to be planning out next year's videos this December, and we'll look at getting that one in there.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
And we can do that. But you just store the coffee beans. I think we kind of talked about this a few minutes ago, didn't we?
Okay,
so we've covered
airtight.
it. Yeah, airtight.
Temperature stable.
And the freezing does kill the bugs. We've never had bugs in the coffee. Certainly understand what they're talking about in the wheat, but if you did, I would try the freezing, you know, and give that a try.
Yeah, anything that comes in bags like that, you can freeze for 3 days, and that should kill off everything.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, Finding Femininity 5 asks, what size jars would you can water at 20 minutes? So
the 20-minute time is if you're at sea level, and that is a quart jar time. If you wanted to move up to a half-gallon time or a half-gallon size, you could certainly do that for water. There's only a few things that you can safely in half-gallon sizes according to the USDA. They don't talk a lot about water. There are a few extension offices that talk about canning water, but you would want to increase that by 10 minutes to move up to the by 5 minutes to move up from quart size to half-gallon size. And so that would take you to about 25 minutes in a water bath canner to can water in a half-gallon jar. That's at sea level. Make sure you adjust for your elevation. Yeah.
Cool.
That's that.
Okay. Nicole Goodfriend asks, with the below ground valves you have, how deep do your pipes go? And also, what is the lowest heat source you use in your pump house through the winter? So these are frost-free bibs. If you guys haven't seen these, if you live in an area where your ground freezes, your hardware store should have them. They actually have a rod in them, and they shut off below ground, and that pipe then drains, and that's how they can sustain super cold weather. How deep they go depends on how deep your frost line is and your freeze line. And they make them anywhere from, the ones I've seen, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet down, and your area should have the variety that's appropriate for you.
Okay.
And those are wonderful to have. They just give you access to water throughout the winter in places that you don't have heat in. And we have drained a lot of hoses and done a lot of strategies. And I was very excited to put those in this year on our property.
So if you're, let's say you've moved to a new piece of property, you don't really know what your frost line depth is at, and maybe your hardware store has 3 different amounts. Who would you ask? Who would you talk to?
Well, your neighbors.
Neighbors, okay.
You know, the hardware store guy should know. It depends on your region, though. We have some differences right here, even in our region, and so they sell from 3 to 5 footers here. And your agricultural extension could have some information for you as well. But your neighbors is the best. If you're in a rural community, talk to your neighbors and find out, and they'll know. Also a builder. Builder will usually know, because they have to, you have to dig your foundation so deep to get below a freeze line as well to keep it from moving during that freeze-thaw cycle. So any of those people should have some answers for you. And as far as the pump house, we're just going to try out a little 200-watt heater. We just had it insulated, and it's over the tank, which isn't going to freeze because of the mass amount of water in the ground, along with there's always little water coming in and going out. So with the insulation, I'm hoping to get by with 200-watt heater. We'll let you know how that goes. We've had a 1500-watt heater in there is what we had. It just way overheats the place, so it's using more energy than we need.
Right, we don't want that.
So I think we just had it really, really well insulated. I think the little 200-watt heater is going to do it.
Okay.
But we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how many more of these we can do.
We're starting to get long on time here, so.
Yeah, I know you've got some other stuff to get to.
You want to pull out a few?
Let's check this one out. I know you've got a perspective on this, and this is about dealing with pantry moths. I've been fighting them off and on for 2 years. I'm using bay leaf in each jar and using phyto jars for my grains and loose food. And I also have moth traps. Any perspective on dealing with the pantry moths? You know,
it sounds like you're probably doing the right things for being in the middle of the battle. And the trick with pantry moths is that once you get them, they're really hard to get rid of. So one of the big keys here is to never put something in your pantry in its original packaging, especially if that's a cardboard or a paper type packaging. Transfer it before it ever hits the your pantry into glass, food grade bucket, plastic bucket, something like that, because those guys really kind of come into your pantry and can hide out in that cardboard or in those paper bag. Those are multi-layer a lot of times. So anything that comes in should really be transferred beforehand, and that's kind of a key to just keeping those things gone. It sounds like you're doing a lot of the right things at this point, and you just have to keep it up, making sure you're not bringing in any more packaging with them in it. Adding diatomaceous, food grade diatomaceous earth to grains, into flours, into anything like that can be really helpful. You just have to look up the amount. I can't recall it offhand, but there's an amount for like a 50-pound bag of something. You would put this much diatomaceous earth in. That way, if anything does hatch inside your container, it dies before it can start laying eggs again and keep the cycle going. Another thing we just touched on is putting anything that's coming into the house into the freezer for a few days first. That should kill off any eggs that are in there, so that you're not then getting a hatching cycle going in your pantry.
And it sounds to me, possibly, if these things aren't working and you're not getting control of it, a pantry makeover of sorts might be worth doing, where you take everything out, get rid of the materials where they might be breeding, make sure you have your storage systems correct, refreeze everything, and possibly whitewash or treat the room or something like that. It sounds like if you're at that level and this keeps going much longer, you'd want to do something like that and try to get back to ground zero, and then do the things Carolyn's
Unfortunately,
talking about.
some areas of the country just really have the right environment for those things to just kind of breed and just keep going. But if Josh just touched on it, if you read any of the old books, they would once a year clean out the pantry, Get everything out and whitewash it with a lime mixture. And that just kills off anything that's trying to hide in there. So that's a good way to go if you get to that level.
Okay, let's see here. Bjorna from Belgium. Hey, thanks for reaching out. And let's see, how would you store your large amount of flour? I try to store a year's worth, which is several hundred pounds for her. And for now, I'm using my freezer, but I need that for storing meat. So she wants to switch gears here, which is great. Good steps there for long-term storage.
So flour is one of those ones that's a little tricky. It's not as clear-cut as just a whole grain because it depends on the type of flour. Right. You should really not be storing any whole wheat or whole meal. I think it's called in a lot of Europe areas is whole meal flours. Because they still have the oils in them and they'll go rancid and they won't stay good for you. So your better option for that is to buy the whole grain, get a home mill and mill it in small batches as you need it. If you're talking about plain white flour, that can kind of store for a really long time, and we do buy in some white flour. So there are uses for white flour. It's not the healthiest, so we try to minimize that, but that is something that can be stored. If you have frozen that for 3 days in your freezer, you can take it out and put it in a food grade bucket with a sealable lid. I don't know what you can get in Belgium, but here in the United States we have something called a gamma seal lid, where it has a screw top for a bucket, for a 5-gallon bucket. They have them for 2.5-gallon buckets too, I think.
I think so.
And that just makes an airtight, insect tight, all of that tight, moisture tight barrier to lock down those things in buckets. Barrels, of course, or the other food grade barrels would be the other option for that.
Right, they just don't seal down quite the same.
Seal
so for
as
flour,
well.
I'd be a little wary of that myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you're really humid, you want to make sure and put in a oxygen.
If you're humid.
If it's humid.
I thought you said human. If you're really human.
Hopefully we're all human here. Right.
If it's really humid, you might want to put in something
with
to
that
pull
flour,
out.
right? If you're gamma sealing it or something.
Yeah,
so
some
you're
sort
not
of desiccant
right, so
in there.
The desiccant, there you go. That was the word I couldn't find.
Right, which could be like a nylon, like pantyhose filled with rice. That way it doesn't get loose into your flour.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Good. One on the herb rub, and it was just about pepper. He said, no pepper?
You picked that comment on
I
purpose.
did. I thought the same thing. Pepper, that's a joke in our house because pepper goes on everything as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Yeah. And,
maybe not so much where I'm concerned.
Giano LaBird, you can definitely, I think, put pepper on that herb rub.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you guys didn't see that video on that herb rub, that is a great herb rub that Carolyn makes.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure and have a link to it.
Somebody asked about what cuisine, what international,
what
nationality would
we're running out of time.
On? Right.
Yeah, if you put a region to the taste, what would it be?
Said
the tinkerer's wife. I love some of your guys' names.
I know, they're really
good.
Great. I have no idea. Do you have a thought on that? Is it
it feels Mediterranean. It feels Mediterranean.
Maybe?
I don't know that I could pin it down. French or Spanish I would go to. It's not really Italian. Yeah. And I think of it mostly on the lamb. So I guess
but it's good on everything. It sounds so interesting because it has that peppermint in it. But it just, I guess that is not the flavor that comes through. That just adds to this good flavor. Just try a little bit. I don't know. Maybe if you guys have tried it and you have a nationality that you would think that it...
Give us your vote.
Because I don't know.
There you go.
There we go.
Give us your vote.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. One more, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging with us if you're still here. And Kim Bowen would like to know how to keep your bread fresh for the week.
Okay, this may be for the week.
For the week, because I think you teach, and I know the way we make bread, it's weekly. And, so I don't know if she's somebody that's taken your class or however, but often that's the cycle. So how to keep it fresh through that cycle.
People want a single answer to this, and there isn't one. And the reason is because it depends on the environment that you live in.
Right.
If you live in a really dry environment, your problem is that your bread is going to go stale and dry. If you live in a really moist environment, likely your bread is going to go moldy. And so you kind of need to approach it from those angles. If you live in a really dry environment, to keep your bread fresh, you want to keep it in something that keeps moisture in the bread, which unfortunately is often a plastic. Sometimes a bread tin, if you can find those old bread tins, bread boxes is good. If you get a beeswax like linen bag, do you guys know what I mean? Like the linen bread bags, but they're beeswaxed over, infused into the cloth. I have a video out on that, so you can check that out. That can help keep the moisture in. If you're in a really humid place, then your problem is the opposite and you want to keep it dried out so you don't get mold. So then you want the non-beeswaxed bread bags. Does that make sense? Am I being clear?
Yep.
Okay.
I got
So if, depending on your environment, you may not be able to keep bread fresh out of the freezer for an entire week. In some places, no matter what you do, they're going to go either stale or moldy within about 4 to 5 days. In which case, if you're in one of those, bake, in my class, I teach to bake about 5 to 6 loaves once a week. Put 3 of them in the freezer right off and pull them out halfway through the week. They'll be great like that. But don't try and keep them out, because in that situation it can be really frustrating. You can lose a lot of bread before you get that worked out. Yeah. So,
or anyways, you can make it fresh a little more regularly.
Yeah, we can do that too.
A lot of us have to really work on time efficiency.
Yeah.
And so that's not always an option.
Yeah.
But if you do have that option, that's a great way to go as well. Just make a little less.
Sure.
Alrighty, we've got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we've gone way over time.
You guys have been hanging with us. This is one of the longer pantry chats, but thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
And next time we're going to be covering some gift ideas.
Ooh,
coming up
fun.
on Christmas here, and just some homestead gift ideas. I think maybe a few DIY ideas, along with, I think we're going to have a few deals for you. A couple of our favorites. And that we want to share with you as well. So hopefully have some good homestead Christmas gifts.
And do you know what the one thing is that makes a homemade grate super cool? I'll figure it out by next week when we're talking.
Well, one thing I wanted to show them is Brianna's coloring book that she made.
Yeah,
I think that is an awesome one.
Right.
She wasn't, I don't know if she was making that for a gift, but
she was actually. She made it for a gift.
Our daughter made a homemade coloring book. She actually made and drew herself
did the
all of the
outlines on
patterns and made a whole book that somebody could then color in. Yeah. So there you go. There's a hint of what's coming next week.
There's one of them.
That one will be there.
That's a great one. Good.
Yep. It's been good hanging with you guys. Have a great week, and we will see you soon.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.